sit while I do this?
Yep.
You want me to stand because then I can, but I prefer to keep these kind of casual. These are fairly free-flowing. My name is Rob Wolf. I'm with the Municipal Association of South Carolina, and I am the field services representative for the upstate. And as part of the field representatives, as being a field service manager, I'm here to provide you guys support, technical assistance, training, just any questions you guys may have about being an elected official in South Carolina. I will do my best to get you an answer or point you in the right direction. So you've stepped into a very different world if you have no experience in government prior. So the association is here to make that transition as smooth and as easy as possible for you guys. And I'm, like I said, I'm your on-the-ground representative. I'm only an hour's drive away from here. If y'all ever need anything, things like this presentation tonight. So we'll kind of get into it a little bit. So again, I cover the upstate territory. That's my phone number and my email address in there at the bottom left. If you're newly elected, there's also a sheet that has my contact information on it in the packet I give you guys. So I cover the 15 upstate counties, which is about 91 cities. And tonight, thank you. You use my zone in there. Put it right there for everybody.
Which what? The projector. Yeah.
Hey, Rob. Well, I'm asking a question. Can we twist it and put it there? Everybody sees.
We can do whatever y'all want.
I've got mine here somewhere.
Yeah, well, I thought I did.
That might be easier. Young Mary, can you see?
That's good.
It kind of goes this stuff. Y'all know this projector. Yeah, this is.
Absolutely.
Almost now we can really
Thank you, Vic.
Where's the top one? And Joe.
Thank you.
The result beverages, you're on your own, popcorn, you're on your own. I didn't bring you with me tonight, I'm afraid. But this is our new council orientation. So one of the things we do is I'm here to just kind of provide an overview of what the Municipal Association of South Carolina offers, some of our initiatives that we're tackling right now with the legislature and also with our cities. Go over your form of government here at Liberty, the basics of effective meetings, kind of a quick rundown of municipal finance and risk management, and then a quick overview of the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act and the South Carolina Ethics Act as well. And again, this is just a very high-level overview of these topics for you guys, just to kind of get your feet wet. Mayor Wagner was telling me that y'all have signed up for Municipal Elected Officials Institute in a couple of weeks, and I look forward to seeing everybody down in Columbia if you have any as well. So, and if at any point you have any questions or anything, just let me know. Like I said, I want to keep these fairly casual. This is for you guys. I've said this stuff over and over again many times, so this is for your benefit. So whatever you guys need, that's what I'm here for. We'll get started on the Municipal Association of South Carolina. MASC does a number of things for our cities, or we try to. The biggest one that most cities are familiar with, and the one they usually like the most, are local revenue programs. So you guys, as a city, are a taxing jurisdiction, and you issue business license taxes on companies that do business inside the city limits of Liberty. Insurance companies also get taxed as a business, just like any other business would. But you can imagine there's hundreds of homeowners policies, thousands of car policies, and however many other types of insurance may exist in the world. And there's a lot of companies that provide these policies, and each one of them is supposed to be getting a business license. Well, it's a little difficult for all 271 cities across South Carolina to maintain. So for a number of years now, the Municipal Association of South Carolina has run what we call the insurance tax program. And this is a set rate by the legislature that each insurance policy in South Carolina is taxed. And we run the software to compute and collect these revenues, and then we remit them back to the member cities. So we do that for insurance. We also do it for insurance brokers, which are brokers that sell insurance policies where the insurer is not allowed to directly sell policies within a jurisdiction. We also do the telecommunications tax, which is the tax on landlines. Understandably, that's been a very much decreasing source of revenue in recent years, but a little bit still trickles in. And then we also help cities collect overdue debts to the set-off debt program. And also, last year, the Municipal Association remitted $432,000 of local funds to the city of Liberty. So every June, a big check comes in. It was usually my favorite time of year when I was city manager. And I apologize. I didn't really introduce myself. Getting ahead of myself. So in addition to being a field service manager for the USA, I should say in prior life I was the city manager of Terrell, South Carolina, which is a city a little bit larger than this one in the PD region. And I was the planning director and downtown development director, and then eventually the city manager. And I was there for about 7 years. In a life before this one, I was actually a park ranger, so I switched careers quite a bit in my time. The other thing we do at the association is we have a very, very strong advocacy program. So our primary mission is to protect the rights and interests of our member cities. And we support legislation and oppose legislation that we feel infringes on the rights of our member cities. And right now, the legislative season is heating up. It's about to get started next week. And we anticipate some things to be on there that we would oppose and some that we would support. But the biggest ones right now are going to be annexation, which I'm not super familiar with Liberty. They don't have a lot of, I know there's a lot of growth in this area, but there's a lot of annexation tensions. I know there are in this region, but maybe not Liberty specifically. But there's pushes in the legislature to take away cities' ability to annex land independent of other jurisdictions, and we believe that is a right the city should maintain. Another one that's coming up is short-term rentals, and I say coming up, it's been over and over again coming up. We believe the cities have the right to regulate short-term rentals as they see fit. Could be no regulation, it could be very heavy regulation. It's going to depend on what you guys need at the local level. We do not believe in a one-size-fits-all policy set by the legislature for the regulation of short-term rentals. Clemson University, the city of Clemson with the university right there and all those football games, they have very different needs for short-term rentals than, say, Terrell, where I was, where we have some tourism, but not a lot. We also do have an insurance division. That's we call it RMS, our Risk Management Services. The City of Liberty is a member of the South Carolina Municipal Insurance Trust, which is workers' compensation insurance. And you're also a member of the South Carolina Municipal Insurance Risk Fund, which is the liability insurance. So you guys are a member of both of our programs. And then in addition, we do education and training and technical assistance, just like I'm here tonight. So we try to offer as many services as we can to our member cities and support we also have some good ways to keep in touch. Each month you should get a copy of our magazine called Uptown. It has great articles in there about what's going on in the legislature, what's going on around the state. Every Friday we release an episode of our podcast called City Quick Connect. Again, as we get into the legislative season, it's going to shift to the State House. But if you do a lot of driving like I do, it's a great way to keep up with the news of the state. And we also offer From the Dome to Your Homes and a blog as well. Again, it's just to keep you up to date on what's happening in South Carolina as it relates to schools. Another one that a lot of people like, we do offer grants through the association. So for you guys, we have three main grant programs that you can participate in. The one that all cities can participate in is the Impact Fund grant. Historically, the association had what we call the Hometown Economic Development Grant. And these were $25,000 grants that cities could use to complete some type of project that's going to improve the city. And we didn't feel that these grants were really making the impact we were hoping for. A lot of them were being used to fix roofs, replace playground equipment, things that are important, but we were hoping for some bigger projects. So we went back to the drawing board last year and came up with the Impact Fund. And now we have two $100,000 grants that we get each year that go to projects that are transformative for our community. So a big outside-the-box project that may be a little risky that we would support. We also have 8 problem-solving grants for $25,000. And those $25,000 grants, those are going to replace your playground equipment, fix your leaky roof, those other kind of hands-on things that you may need a little extra funding to get done. And the application period for these grants is in the fall of each year. So we just had the previous fall round. We'll have another one probably in September as well. So mark your calendar, put in your applications.
Has Liberty ever gotten any of this money before?
I'd have to check. This grant program is brand new.
Right, but the one before.
Probably. I'd have to go back and look. The program's been around since 2014 prior to that. But I can check.
What have you, for the $100,000 grant, what have you seen municipalities use that for?
So the first two that were awarded went to the city of Aiken and the city of Greenville. And the one in Greenville went to a resilience shelter is what they're calling it. And it's essentially a store-ready facility, and this is post-hurricane, of course, that can serve as a hub for people to get information, charge phones, stay in touch, Wi-Fi services, in a post-disaster situation. Throughout the rest of the year, I believe the intent is that it would be general community hub. The other one went to the city of Aiken, and that was called Saving to Seconds. Anyway, the idea is that throughout the city, they're going to install a number of AEDs and offer training classes to their residents on how to use those AEDs. And it has a really good name. I apologize, I can't think of it, but the idea is that when you're having a heart or cardiac issue, seconds matter. And so by setting that up throughout the city, hopefully they're going to try to reduce fatalities from those events. And I believe that was a data-driven decision that the number one call they were getting inside the city limits were cardiac events. And so having those AEDs available to reduce that.
And is there any matching outside the city, or is this just a...
There is a match. It's very low. I think it's $1,500 or something. We wanted to make it as affordable as possible. There used to be a tiered match depending on population. That's just a flat match for that. The other two grant programs that are available to you guys as members of Smith-Smurf are the Public Works and Liability Reduction Grants and the Law Enforcement Liability Reduction Grants. And when I was a city manager, I was a firm believer that you don't leave any money on the table. The money's there. Take it. And so these will be opening up soon, probably the end of this month. But these are first-come, first-served grants. They're reimbursement-based, and they're really just for things that reduce your liability for your employees and for your law enforcement officers. So one of the things we see a lot of is car accidents. We don't like car accidents. They're very expensive. And so say you want to put backup cameras in your vehicles or flashing lights in your public works vehicles, you can purchase those and then get reimbursed 50% up to $4,000. And so, again, usually you're buying that kind of stuff anyway. It doesn't make sense not to leave money on the table. Same thing for the law enforcement liability reduction grant. I believe y'all probably buy taser cartridges each year. Taser cartridges get reimbursed 50% of the full investment. No reason not to get it. All you do is submit the receipt to get the record on it. There's also there's a couple other programs through the workers' compensation side as well. Another thing that I do buy every year, body armor for your officers. Goes bad after 5 years. I didn't really know that. You can't see the manager. So you're buying that pretty regularly. Again, we offer a grant up to $2,000. We'll reimburse up to $2,000 every year. So you're spending that money, might as well get something. But those are on our website here. You can see
And is there a cap?
It's $4,000 for the SMRF grants, and it's $2,000 for the workers' compensation grants. And it's a
Per
year.
Per member.
Per member, yeah.
So there's not like we're only giving out $5,000 for the year.
Oh, pardon me. There is a maximum amount we'll give out. It's just first come, first served. Usually it runs out by July. That doesn't mean wait till July and then call me because they ran out of money and I told them July. My experience when I was a city manager was that it would stick around till July or something. But it varies how much they have to get out. I used to know all that. I used to be on the board of SMRF and I had to resign that position, so I'm not quite as good at it.
Okay, can I ask another question? Did we ever use it?
That would be a question for
Or
Mark.
they ever used it?
They didn't last.
Thank you.
That's a question for our guests. They'll let you know. And then our 2026 schedule, just at a glance real quick, I know you guys are coming to Hometown Legislative Action Day on the 20th. I will see you guys there. Our NEOs, too, again, you guys have signed up for us on the 21st. Our annual meeting is July 15th to the 19th this year. It's going to be at Greenville. And then we have the Small City Summit on August 12th this year. It's going to be in Columbia. That's a one-day conference. Population of Liberty is about 3500. And it's for cities 3,000 and under. So maybe not quite as relevant for you guys. But, of our 271 cities in South Carolina, 180 have over 1,000 people. So it's really good. Doesn't mean you can't learn anything, but it's out there. So that's kind of the plans for what the association does. Moving on, we'll go kind of into leadership in your city. And you've been elected. Running a campaign is one thing. Getting elected is one thing. Now you're actually here. You've been sworn in, and it's time to go, and you're all going to work as well-greased cogs in the machine. The one thing I always want to stress to our council is that the teamwork is key. If you go off on your own and try to do stuff alone, you will not get anything done. I don't mean that to say anything against you personally. It's just not going to happen. Councils, governments by nature are collaborative. And so I just always want to encourage our councils to work together and in the same direction. It doesn't mean you always have to get along. Maybe you have to agree on it. But you do have to work as a team. So some of our quick tips for that, and one of the most important ones is do your homework. If you have issues facing the city, I encourage you to study those issues, study the background, study the solutions, see what can be done, but come prepared to council meetings to make decisions. I've seen council members that show up and it's very obvious that it's the first time they're opening their council packet and they're sitting down as the meeting starts. Sure, it works, but again, the voters put trust in you that you are going to be making these informed decisions. And so I encourage you to keep that in mind as these opportunities arise. The other one is ask questions. Ask questions of the staff. Ask questions of the association. Get the answers you need to make informed decisions. I find that if you wait until the meeting to ask questions, there's kind of a chilling effect. And when I was in Toronto, I had council members who would never ask questions in meetings because they never wanted to look like they didn't know what was going on in front of them. So ask those questions if you're uncomfortable speaking in public or however it is. Ask those questions and get those answers you need before the meetings take place. Learn the town's form of government. Liberty operates under the mayor council form of government. You guys do have an administrator. But making sure everyone knows their roles, knows their duties, and stays in their lane really helps keep things moving forward. Sometimes in cities you have a strong mayor, chief administrative mayor in a city, and council members will start going out and telling workers what to do. You shouldn't be doing that. That's going to cause problems. It's going to make them wonder, who do I report to? I worked under the city manager form of government, and we had a mayor who was very enthusiastic. And I commended him for being enthusiastic, but when he got elected, he didn't realize that his role as a mayor was to be a council member. And my job as the city manager was to run the day-to-day operations. And he would go out and tell our employees what to do. He didn't mean anything by it. He wasn't being mean or anything, or trying to take charge. But he made the other council members feel embarrassed that they would tell constituents, you need to go see the city manager. And then if he just went and did it, they would say, well, why does he get to do it and not do it? So if you step outside of your duties, it just creates dysfunction. And that's what we want to avoid. Now, that being said, you have Mayor Council Forum. Mayor Ryder is the Chief Administrative Officer of the city. The council still is in charge of all issues on policy. Another thing that I encourage council to do, which I think can get overshadowed sometimes, is to celebrate your community. Social media is a powerful tool, and it can be powerfully bad, but it can also be powerfully good. So if you guys have social media pages, I know the city has them, I would encourage you to celebrate the good things that your city is doing. Celebrate your employees. Celebrate your victories. I would not use social media to air your grievances. I'm a big believer that nothing was ever solved by a Facebook post. I'm open to being proven wrong. I just don't think that's the case. If there's issues that need to be worked out, Facebook or Twitter or whatever is not the venue to do that, to air out your grievances, to try to solve conflict. So I would encourage, use social media to promote the positive, but avoid engaging in back and forth online. And then this is something that's more recent, but if you have an official Facebook page like your Councilman Wilson, and you have your Facebook page, that may be a public forum, so you need to be very careful about moderating comments or especially blocking people from the page. It's increasingly understood that those are First Amendment violations, and if you're speaking on behalf of your official capacity, on behalf of the city or whichever, that is a public forum. And so one thing I encourage people to do is if you're going to make a Facebook post, post it and then delete it. Don't go read the comments. Don't go upset yourself. Just post it and let it be. And I learned that lesson the hard way. Like every city, we had a community complaint Facebook page. Everyone has one. And it was 9 o'clock at night. I was in my very comfy recliner. And suddenly someone posted something very mean about me online because I did something they didn't like. And I made myself very upset at 9:30 at night. And I said, gosh, why am I killing myself at 9:30 when I shouldn't be relaxing? After that, I got off social media pretty quick. Again, just be careful on social media. And another issue that I always like to say is government. We're all human. It's government, but we're all human beings. And if someone had an issue with you, you would want them to come to you in person, not blast you on Facebook. Just keep that in mind when you start typing in those comments.
So are you saying not to have an official social media Facebook page?
No, I think they're very good.
Personal one?
I think they're very good. I think it's a good thing to have one, actually. you need to be careful about moderating content. Again, I would use it to showcase the new sewer line going in, or look, we cut the ribbon for this new business, things like that. Yeah. You guys are the champions for the city, and through social media, you can set the tone for the city. It's up to you what kind of tone that's going to be, but I would encourage you to keep it positive. Or as Vince Lombardi said, praise the public and criticize the public. Disagreements happen. It will happen. That's okay. It's part of government. But I would always just say, don't let disagreement derail the good you have going on yourself. And civility is one of our core initiatives within the association. Unfortunately, I'm sure you've witnessed it. We see it across the state. It's just increasing hostility among elected officials, among the public. And so, again, you guys, as the leaders of the city, you do set the tone for how this government is going to run. And we just encourage civil discourse. In fact, I was admiring your civility pledge that you have had over here. So I'm glad to see what you guys have adopted. But again, we can disagree without being disagreeable. No personal attacks. If you have disagreements, make sure it's on the facts at hand. Local government is about the practical problems your citizens face every day. And I just always encourage people to keep that in mind. Leave the big policy decisions to Washington, D.C. I always say that if you're a Democrat or Republican way to pick up trash, it's either going to get done or it's not. But again, formal politeness, courtesy, civility, incivility, rude or unsocial assumption. And again, you guys have already adopted the civility pledge as well. And part of the reason we push civility as well is it's for your benefit as well. Local citizens, I think, will want to see their council be dysfunctional. They will eat it up and be boring. Get things done, but be boring. Don't get egged on by social media. So moving on to your form of government. As I mentioned, Liberty operates under the Fair Council form of government. It is the most used form of government in South Carolina. Of our 271 cities, 135 of them operate under this form of government. You guys have one mayor and 6 council members. And the duties and powers of the mayor and council are governed by SC Code, Title 5, Chapter 9, Sections 10. It's not a whole lot there, but that's basically what it is. So within this form of government, the mayor is the chief administrative officer of the municipality. So the mayor is responsible for directing and supervising staff and departments. The mayor by law presides at meetings of council and also votes as a member of council. Sometimes we have mayors say, well, I only vote in the case of a tie. That's true in Robert's Rules of Order that the presiding officer only votes in case of a tie. But in South Carolina, the law is very clear that the mayor is a voting member of council. So the mayor is going to exercise administrative, executive authority, and legislative authority. The mayor is responsible for preparing the budget, and the mayor is also responsible for providing reports to the council. So where does that leave our council? Council has all of the legislative and policy-making authority. So you guys are setting a big picture that the mayor is going to be operating in. So, your employee handbook, how trash collection, debris collection is going to be done, how you're going to handle water costs or zoning matters. All that's going to be handled by council. So while the mayor prepares the budget, council is going to be responsible for adopting the budget. Council also elects a mayor pro tem, who operates in the absence of the mayor. Council establishes and abolishes departments, which must be done by ordinance. And the council as a whole employs an administrator, a city clerk, a city attorney, and a municipal judge. That's all spelled out in the state law. Council also investigates departments members of the Planning Commission and the Board of Zoning Appeals, and the council may appoint special committees. Any questions so far? Straightforward, right? Black and white. Now, in the mayor council form of government, the council is allowed to hire a city administrator, and in this case, Liberty does have a city administrator. It's Chapter 2, Section 161 of the Liberty City Code. And basically, an administrator in this form of government is employed to assist the mayor, and certain duties may be assigned by ordinance or just the needs of the mayor. So for you guys, examples of duties that may be assigned are personnel management, monitor the financial condition of the city, make recommendations on purchasing, and administer the budget that's been adopted by council. I'm assuming you're a part-time mayor, so it's good to have help on that day-to-day operation. 3,500 people may sound like a small city, but it's really not. There's a lot of moving parts each day, and so we have a lot of city employees. It's really only our smallest communities that don't have some type of insurance. Everyone clear? I know we're zooming along here.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So personnel management is all personnel?
So this is where I say working as a team is what's important. You can assign the management of personnel to an administrator, but the mayor is still the chief administrative official. And ideally, that mayor and that administrator are going to be working as a team to make these decisions. And it's a similar when I was in Troy, even though I was the city manager, I had all hiring and firing ability, regardless of what council wanted. I recognized I still worked for them, and we needed to be on the same page when we were going to make decisions. And the same is true of the mayor council form of government. Although the mayor, in theory, could go off and do whatever without council, I would encourage y'all again to keep that team mentality and work as a group and make sure everyone's on the same page. Ultimately, again, the mayor is going to have that final decision, or the mayor can say, your administrator makes that decision. But I encourage you to teamwork and stay on the same team.
Maybe it wasn't clear. I'm trying to get to the direct reports. The direct reports go to the mayor, or the direct reports go to the administrator?
So typically, again, it's a teamwork thing, but typically the way you see it is direct reports on an immediate basis will go to the administrator. And then the administrator will typically work with the mayor. That doesn't stop them from going to the mayor, but because the mayor is part-time and not here all the time, that's generally the easiest way. That's how we did it. Before we changed from the government to all, that's how we did it. Day-to-day, everything was handled by the administrator, and the administrator worked very, very closely with it. But it's, again, finding what works for you guys. So, effective meetings. And working under the public eye can sometimes be a little intimidating, so being prepared for meetings is very important. Going back to the earlier point I made about asking questions, come to meetings prepared to discuss, get the answers you need up front so that you will be a contributing, active member of this body. And a key part of this is no surprises. Every member of council, mayor included, should be getting the same information. If the body's getting something that someone else isn't getting, that is the quickest way to go from slighted to dysfunction junction, as we would say. And if you're all on the same page, it should be easier to come to a consensus as to what needs to be done. Now again, just in getting the information, it's still up to you to do your homework and make sure you're coming prepared. Again, don't let someone in the audience make it seem like that's the first time you're looking at the information, especially for the purchase or adopting a plan or something like that. So, some other keys, and I know this is going to sound very elementary school, but it's important. So one of the top things is arrive on time. When I was in Trinidad, we had a planning commission meeting, and we had a public hearing. A rather contentious public hearing. We had about 50 people show up. Maybe about 30 of them were against what was going on, and 20 just wanted to see what all the Facebook posts were about. And these 30 people came to speak to the planning commission, and we did not have a quorum. The meeting was supposed to start at 6, and at 6:17, it's burned into my head, 6:17, the commissioner created a quorum, walked into the room, just very slowly and very casually, looked at everybody and said, "Oh, are y'all waiting on me?" You can imagine that that meeting did not go very well. Those people who were already kind of angry now were getting up to speak, and they had extra ammunition to use against the planning commission. So, arriving on time, very important. Same thing, putting away, silencing your cell phone. You guys are working in the public eye. People are coming here to see you conduct the city's business, and you want to be engaged with the city's business. You don't want to look disengaged with what's going on. Again, it's making sure you're not giving them information ammunition to attack you guys. If they're unhappy about something, you don't want them to go home and post on Facebook, "Well, Councilman so-and-so was on their phone. This was important to me, and they couldn't even bother to pay attention." So again, put away your phone, stay focused on what's going on.
Now, I have a question on that. As far as being on your phone, I use my phone to call along and packet. Is that an issue?
No, I wouldn't think so. I think it's more of a you're sitting there going,
Oh, okay.
text.
So it's okay as long as...
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't do it. I mean, it's very common now to iPads out and that sort of thing, but if you're clearly not engaged with, if someone's getting up to speak to you, don't be texting while they're speaking to you.
Don't have Candy Crush playing in the background.
Don't be texting.
I use mine to follow the packet, so I know when I'm.
No, I think that's right. I'm a big paper-free is my preferred, so I think that's good. But in that same vein of giving people the attention and the respect that comes with giving them attention, avoiding side conversations. Again, if somebody's come to council to speak on something that's important to them, you want to be engaged in that person. Or if you guys are having side conversations, same thing. They're going to feel very disrespectful. Let people know that they are disrespectful. By that same token, body language is very important. Be an active listener and engage with what people are saying, whether it's a council member or a member of the public. I guess I have a rather expressive face, and we had a public hearing one time, and a lady who's very nice got up and she decided that she wanted to speak on something that had no relevance to the public hearing. In fact, it may or may not have involved UFOs, all protected the guilty party. And the town clerk was very nice and texted me and said, "Fix your face." And it's because I'm like, and it's true, I made a face. Even though what the lady was saying really, if you believe in UFOs, great, but this was about water rights and nothing to do with UFOs. Again, you still want to be an active, engaged listener, and in that case, our mayor, the chair, said, "This is about water rights." But again, body language is important. People do this. So, under state law, there's 5 types of meetings that are allowed by you guys as a public body. There's regular meetings of council, which you should be holding every month. There's special or call meetings, which can be done at the direction of the mayor or a majority member of council members. There's public hearings, which are mandated under state law for various things, but you can also hold public hearings on your own volition. There's executive session, which we'll go into a little bit more, and then there's emergency meetings as well.
Can I ask a question real quick before we get into the types? On the regular meeting, I know in the previous administration, they always skipped July for regular meeting. Is there any sort of, should we be doing that? I'm thinking no.
I'm not going to tell you you can do it because state law says you have to be.
Right, exactly.
It happens.
Okay.
Usually we see it at Christmas, more so than in July.
It was pretty consistent, every year for the last couple of years.
I had a mayor call me and say, "I'm not going to have a quorum this Christmas Christmas, what do I do? I'm scared Sled's going to bust down. You know, do the best you can, but if you can't eat, you can't eat. But if that happens, though, I would encourage you to just pick a new day that month. And even if there's no business, you still make the meeting that month.
Some cities will substitute something like at Christmas. They may have, they'll have for their meeting packing the Toys for Tots things, or they may have Christmas dinner with employees at their meeting. Because the quorum issue is often a problem, particularly depending on what your council's makeup is, whether they typically all take vacation July 4th, that can be a problem. But Christmas, as we talked about earlier, it's always those 2 weeks in the end of the year are always hard. But you can substitute something, a different activity, maybe that doesn't require the work that a regular meeting does.
So, and I apologize, I forgot to hit it, this that should say 4, not 5. So, meetings occur whenever there's a quorum of members. So for you guys, that's 4, not 5. Again, my apologies. And when you guys are meeting, except in executive session, the public must be allowed to attend. They have to be noticed that you're meeting. And I always stress this. It's a public meeting. It is not the public's meeting. You guys are elected to conduct business for the city of Liberty on behalf of the people. You're not elected to have the people come up here and tell you what to do and interrupt and run the meeting and all that kind of stuff. So the public gets to attend. The public can record, which includes live streaming, but the public doesn't get to run the meeting. First and foremost, these are business meetings of the council. I always like to stress that. Sometimes I see meetings that there's maybe a little too much public interaction. The council will be discussing and we get into impromptu Q&A and the answers aren't great. It just creates a bunch of problems. So again, council meetings are business meetings first and foremost.
Real quick, I'm curious. Quorum issues. We're going to be carpooling later this month. Could we let them in the car with us? No, I'm just teasing.
I'm just trying to get you off track. Yeah, I just asked you the other question. I know we can notice the same thing. I'm just asking that question. I've seen that there. If more people in there together, we potentially have a mission based off what you're saying.
So there's actually an AG opinion about this where there were 2 council members on a committee. The committee's of 3, and there were 2 council members who were best friends. And they were like, we're going to play golf. What do we? And if I'm remembering correctly, the AG opinion said, these things are going to happen in a small town. It's just
Not a big deal.
going to happen. Well, we'll say it's not a big deal.
I won't throw that out.
You can't discuss business. You certainly can't make any decisions about that.
To the same effect, is there any general consensus around should the mayor and mayor pro tem both go in the same vehicle, travel together? I'm just curious. I mean, because it's kind of something you would never want to happen, but when we're in a car accident and both the mayor and pro tem are taken out at the same time, I hate to think about that stuff. But my brain goes, yeah. And so we had actually discussed it on Friday, and I said, I actually don't know. We'll ask Rob if he's here.
I think in that case you would. Certainly that's kind of concerned, but I think the council will elect the new mayor pro tem
Okay.
after. That's not
I'm
never
just
going to happen.
curious. I'm just curious if there's some guidelines that we should be following.
You would get a dark on this.
Sorry. We talked about it on Friday. And
It's an interesting thought experiment. But in that case, you would get together and elect the remaining council members would elect the new mayor pro tem.
Okay.
And I'll throw one other thing out. That AG opinion actually was kind of sharp in its tone, and it didn't really say that you could. I think that the members of, I can't remember what it was Pearl and Partners, but they would go out to drink and go out to eat because they all enjoyed each other, and they could have a quorum doing that. And the AG's opinion was rather sharply worded about the appearance of that, but the way to avoid that issue would be to publicize it and say, council is going to be attending the Elected Officials Institute in Columbia, and just publish it so you're not hiding anything. Because it's really the appearance of hiding something that's the problem. So you can get around that by saying, you could say, some members of council may be playing golf in this, nonprofit tournament or something, but
Right, and we did that. We did the Reach Across America a couple weeks ago, because I figured we probably perform, so we just put it out there just to make sure the public was aware.
that's the best way.
Okay.
So I do have a question as far as form goes, is like when we did the bus retreat, when we go to the museum, are you allowed to have a forum outside of the district?
So, you still have to publish it, notice it, and all that.
Okay, so that
It's
is,
just wherever you guys are.
okay, so it's not, as long as it's not in Liberty. Wait,
Yeah.
You're holding a form no matter where you are.
Yeah.
you just have to publish
You
it.
just have to publish it.
Yeah.
There's no geographic boundary where your form is.
There's nothing to do. We did that with the position. We all there. All there.
And by that same token, we would, when we had the Christmas party, for instance, and so we would publish what we call the non-meeting notice. It was, yes, there may be a forum of council members present during this time. Council will not discuss business and will not take action on matters.
And then they'll say that we're not walking there.
I know.
Council will be careful to do.
That's why for the Reach Across America, they had posted it online, and posted it on the City of Liberty door. I think it was here on the Rosewood door. It's on all the public places. You have to make that.
And sometimes I'll get the question, what if council needs to go visit somewhere as a group? How do we do that? In that case, I would say, pick a time. You're getting post notice somewhere, that should be meeting somewhere as a group. Looking at town facilities. It's just making sure it's like a walk out or do something.
Oh, yeah, when that comes up, we're going to have to do the public announcement of that too.
Well, not like the actual. The manufacturer plant. Okay, I was going to say, this is the fun council. I'm here to walk around the store. So within your meetings, the mayor is the chair of all the meetings, but the body is the ultimate decider of all parliamentary decisions. So the mayor can rule on parliamentary procedure, but that parliamentary procedure can be overruled on final rule. The chair serves the body. Your role is to control and corral, I guess I should say, the meeting and make sure it's running appropriately. But as I just said, it does not control. But your job is to keep the meeting running. But your job as chair is, of course, not to tell people how to vote or what they should do. It's just to make sure that the meeting runs. Part of that is setting the agenda. So a written agenda is required under all Freedom of Information Act meetings. It provides a guide for issues to be discussed. It ensures the public is aware of what you're going to be discussing. Requires a 24-hour notice, not a 24 notice, pardon me, for items to be added to the agenda unless there's an emergency situation. And under Liberty City Code, Chapter 2, Section 41, the clerk prepares the agenda and the mayor approves the agenda. Again, that may work a little different on the ground level. As part of being a team, I'm sure the administrators are going to be involved in that process. But the mayor is ultimately the approver of the agenda.
So 24 hours to add something to the agenda?
Yes, sir. So if it's...
I thought we had something that said we could add a different meeting.
There's exceptions to that. We'll get into that.
Sorry.
But under state law, if you're going to be making a decision on something, essentially, unless there's an emergency, you need at least 24 hours notice when you edit the agenda.
Do you have to post that? Edition?
If you edit the agenda, you need to post the edit of the agenda.
Is it 24 business hours or is it 24 just hours?
The law just says 24 hours. And you guys have a section under your code. I'm not quite sure how this works under your code. I need to see an actual, but it does say council members may request items we consider unless 2 members object. And hopefully y'all have a process for how that
I know it says council members may request, but only 2 members object. Can I be one of those members to object?
Sure.
Okay, that's what I thought. I'm just making sure.
That's how
I would do. Okay.
if I'm saying anything wrong.
I think we're kind of looking at that right now.
Yeah. So here's what we're talking about amending the agenda. This is under state law. So suppose something comes up and it requires the agenda to be amended, and you don't have 24 hours to publish that agenda before you meet. If the item to be added to the agenda is not a final action and an opportunity for public comment has or will be granted at a future meeting that has been properly noticed, you can amend the agenda by a 2/3 vote of the members present and voting. Now, that's a lot to say, but the way I usually see this is an example I always use. We have a transit system in Sherrall, and the executive director wanted to come and speak to council just to give an update on what the transit system was up to. There was no action to be taken, there were no decisions to be made, he just wanted to provide information to council. So in that case, council amended the agenda by 2/3 vote that allowed him to address. Now, I heard some breathing.
So is that like a majority vote of the council? Basically.
A 2/3 of members present.
It's kind of like a super majority, right?
Right.
Now, if you're going to amend the agenda and this is the final action you're going to take on something that the public is not allowed to comment on it at a publicly noticed meeting, then it can be added to the agenda with a 2/3 vote, members present and voting, and the motion to amend the agenda needs to include a finding that there is some emergency circumstance that exists in order to amend it.
Who says that it's urgent or time sensitive?
Council.
Council would say that it is?
Part of the 2/3 vote.
So the threshold you need to think of, though, is if council's going to be the ones to make a decision whether or not that's an exigent circumstance. A court may do it differently.
Right, that's what I was
Down the
wondering.
line. And we saw a lot of this in COVID. When COVID hit real rapidly, we see it after major disasters from time to time. But I would say in general, I would avoid amending the agenda. Just say, don't give the public any indication that you guys are up to something sneaky or whatever. If something didn't make it on this month's agenda, usually it's looking government, nothing is that much of an emergency.
Sometimes there are exceptions, and the one I can think of is like if a deadline for grant applications coming up.
Right.
But the time pressure is one of those things that's clearly evident.
That's a good example.
Yeah.
I like that example. Ordinances and resolutions. State law is clear that certain things require ordinance. Ordinances are essentially laws made by the council. Ordinances must be passed by having 2 readings on 2 separate days with at least 6 days between each reading. So you can't have 2 meetings back to back and pass an ordinance. You have at least 6 days between them. An adopted ordinance can only be amended by another ordinance. So that's called the equal dignity rule. If you guys pass an ordinance or something, you can't use a resolution to suspend it or modify it. So the things that ordinances have to be used for are annexation, setting the salary of council, the conduct of elections, adopting the building codes, adopting your rules of procedure, zoning and land use matters, establishing or abolishing departments, establishing fines and penalties, borrowing money, adopt your own budget and sell your leasing land. The rest of the time, unless there's something specific in state law, you can use either an ordinance or a resolution. Again, just remember, if you pass something by ordinance, it has to get amended by ordinance.
Got a county question, yes, when I was listening. So you can't amend the ordinance with a resolution, correct? Correct.
We see it. One that comes to mind is a lot of times, say for instance, the city is going to have a special event and they're going to serve alcohol or something. They'll suspend their open container law by resolution. Legally, that needs to be done by ordinance, not resolution. That's one of the examples we typically see.
I guess I was going to ask the question, but I don't understand. A resolution was passed that kind of locked out what could and couldn't go downtown through resolution, correct? This is the downtown. So our resolution for downtown. It's tied back to the zoning ordinance too, so maybe it's some kind of loophole I don't know. You remember that they passed a resolution also with March, right? They passed a resolution limiting.
Yeah, but the resolution was to send it to the planning commission to discuss it.
But
That was what the resolution was.
They put a pause on the ordinance.
The ordinance that was being considered by the planning commission.
Yes, but it's still a pause.
No, it's not changed. I mean, the ordinance exists like it was whenever, I don't know when it was originally.
Is that a resolution? I guess my question.
The resolution does not pause that, because y'all haven't voted on it, to enact laws to change that yet.
So I want to rent a building, go downtown. I could go one. Is that what you're saying?
There's nothing about
That's
that.
right now.
No voting, but no changing.
Just nothing, we didn't take a vote, so it changed.
I think what happened was that
It was turned over to the
planning.
planning commission.
They turn out.
And we were waiting on a response back from the planning commission.
They incorporated it in, because eventually they're going to look at, y'all are going to look at a whole new ordinance.
I don't think
Based on their recommendations, and they folded it up into that.
That was a question that
Or twice.
And we're coming to two meetings, basically recommending not to pass.
Right,
Right.
just leave it.
Right.
All set?
Yeah.
No, but you're right about moratoriums. That's a big thing right now with the county. And a moratorium has to be an ordinance that's going to stay a part of their zoning or their permitting process for new construction.
That was the grant I was chasing, probably the Facebook grant.
Okay.
I'm just putting a lot of this.
I'm saying the Facebook, but I'm not.
Yeah, so we do see like a lot of moratoriums right now and stuff, and occasionally we may get the question, can we do this by resolution, that we see a lot. If you're suspending some type of zoning regulation, building or something that you should not by ordinance. But I prefer your legal counsel.
That's just a curious question more than anything else.
So I do have a question. To reverse ordinance, say we want to backtrack on ordinance, is it still the 2/3 majority?
No,
That's only, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, repealing the ordinance is just a simple majority vote. Remember, the rest of the vote. The 2/3 is.
So it's still 2 readings?
Oh, yes, still 2 readings. The 2/3 is only for amending the agenda within the 24 hours. That's what I would describe as exhibit. All right. Resolutions, on the other hand, these are formal expressions of opinion or will or intent by the council. They only require a single vote, and this can get confusing sometimes, but whether you're having a written resolution that you're signing or you're just making a verbal motion, those carry the same weight legally. Those are both resolutions. Sometimes a written resolution is more helpful. Like say you're applying for a grant or something, laying out where the funds are going to come from, if you win the grant, and why you're applying for the grant, those sorts of things. All those are going to go in the whereas statements. Having that written down is probably going to be helpful. And also, you probably have to submit it to the grant agency. Legally, whether you do it by voice or by written resolution, they carry this. Public engagement, not mandated for all meetings. And within South Carolina, there's, outside of the public hearing is required, there's no legal right to speak at a council meeting. So therefore, council is allowed to set its own rules for public participation. The primary goal for setting these rules and even allowing the public to participate is to maintain order. Again, that's why I stress that this is a business meeting, this is not the public meeting. And I'll give you an example. I was at the city and they had kind of gotten away from their rules they set for public comments. They would allow people to ask questions, and inevitably that would be followed up by another question from someone else in the audience. And then, not only that, it just kind of broke up the order of the meeting, and people were going back and forth. So again, you want to maintain order. And sometimes citizens will say, you don't answer our questions. You just don't want to answer our questions. You hate us, you hide stuff from us, whatever. I always stress that you want to give people good information, accurate information. And if you're letting people ask you questions on the spot at a business meeting, you're probably not prepared to give them a good answer. And so you may misspeak, which I've had that happen to me one time. You may misspeak, you may be incorrect, you may not have all the answers. And so you just want to avoid those appearances like you don't know what's going on, or you're trying to hide something, or kind of backtrack very long. That's what it's about. It's not about hiding anything, it's about making sure they get good information. We allow public comments to be wrong, and one time a lady stood up and asked a question, and ideally the mayor would have said, this is public comment, it's not a question and answer session. And he kind of said, rather than answer the question, I was not prepared to do that, just wasn't. And I'm not sure the answer I gave was that correct, speaking on the spot. So yeah, it's just about maintaining order.
Is there any way you could just explain to them if you don't have the answer, and that you can get the answer and then get their information?
So what I would do with a public comment is when people came up and they would ask, and that's another thing, I would encourage you to explain the rules of public comments before you start, because people don't understand that it's not the time to ask questions. But they do. Let's say that. So in that case, what I would do is I would say, I hear your question, please see me after the meeting, and we can discuss it, or please see the administrator or the appropriate department head. And we would like to get you an answer. We're just not prepared at this time. So you guys do have public comment rules in place. Liberty Code Chapter 2, Section 42. And it's any citizen of the city shall be entitled to appear before the mayor and council at any regular meeting concerning any city matters, and that's a regularly scheduled meeting. If they want to speak, they have to notify the clerk on the topic in which they want to speak no later than 4:30 on the Friday preceding the council meeting. And I think that's a good thing. Again, the idea is not to have surprises and to maintain order. So knowing what people are going to speak about so that you can maybe have answers prepared for after the meeting or something like that, gives you it just gives you a good idea.
We're actually working on changing that.
Are y'all to?
Yeah, to allow people to come in and sign up on the sign-in sheet and also address council as well. But we will preface it with, this is not a Q&A session, this is a public comment. Like you said, get down their information, follow up with them later. But this, for a lot of people, especially in our little community, is very difficult because most of us work 8 to 5, and so for somebody to be able to pick up the phone when they get home from work at 5:30 and reach our city clerk is very difficult. So we're trying to just be more inclusive. I kind of really hate that word, but it is inclusive to be able to allow people to show up on Monday and still sign up when they walk in and be able to literally have their 3 minutes to say what they need to say. okay?
I personally am a fan of that. As long as the rules keep the meeting orderly, I'm a fan of anything. But for us to control, we did two versions, so you could actually be on the agenda if you called the Friday before, like Brad. Then we actually could answer your questions because we would know to be prepared for something. But also anyone could just walk in and we would just say, okay, does anyone have comments? And you could walk in and vote and have your 3 minutes. No questions, but anyone could do
I
it.
think we were still recommending people.
Yes, we're still going to recommend that they do the 4:30 on Friday with the clerk, but if they're not able to, we want to make the open option for them to be able to show up on a Monday and still address.
And I think that's great because at the end of the day, beauty of home rule in South Carolina is you get to do what works for you.
Right.
And
I personally ran into that issue because I worked till 4:30, and so it was like 4:24, and I was like trying to pick up the phone and reach our clerk, and I was like, I'm never going to make it through.
Yeah, it was always very uncomfortable for me when people would call at like 12:05, and I have to tell them, no, I can't do it.
It's too late.
And I'm sure they thought I was just being a jerk to be a jerk. But one of the things, whatever rules you set, I will preface this, stand by them. Don't grant anyone additional time, don't end them, because you will pay for it down the road somewhere. I had a city recently that granted someone an extra 25 seconds to correct when they square meetings. So moving on, the other type of meeting is executive session, which is allowed for 5 specific reasons under state law. Those reasons are to discuss personnel matters, contractual, real estate, and legal matters. And it's worth noting that even though you're allowed to discuss contractual real estate matters in executive session, once like a real estate deal is closed or something like that, those documents related to it do become public record. Security matters, so say your city got hacked and your IT people need to tell you how your cyber systems are working, that's a security matter that can be done in executive session. Investigative matters related to the town, and then also economic development matters. But like like real estate matters, economic development, even though they can be discussed in executive session, if some kind of agreement is executed, those all have public ones. And it's worth noting too that if you pass out papers or something in executive session, those are not necessarily covered under executive session. Those can become retrievable under the Freedom of Information Act. Like say you have some kind of investigative report done and council members get a copy of the executive session, that report, have the person come and discuss it, but if they pass out reports to everybody, that report is available for you running that.
So what if they take those papers back up at the end of the executive session?
I would defer to your legal counsel on that.
I often take up papers if I've got somebody, particularly if I think it's something that, for example, if you all have an economic development project that you're working on that's top secret, and you don't want someone to run up the price on the land that you're going to buy or something like that, I may not even pass out the papers. I might
do a presentation. Yeah.
And that's what I would encourage. And things are still covered under attorney-client privilege. Now, when you go into executive session, you must give a reason for entering into executive session. This comes out of the city of North Augusta, where the city just kind of went into executive session. I believe it was just for personnel matters, and the court ruled that was not enough information. You have to give enough information about why you're going into executive session without compromising the issue. So you may say, going to discuss personnel discipline within the Liberty Police Department or something.
Are you good?
Sorry. I better make sure I'm going to speak when it leaves. But you have to get some kind of why. If there's some contentious project going on, you can't just say we're going to receive legal advice. You can say we're going to receive legal advice related to project review or something like that. Within executive session, don't keep minutes. Keep minutes. It ruins the purpose of executive session. Cannot take votes or take polls in executive session. So it's discussion only when you're in there. Another thing you have to do, this came out of Mount Pleasant, you have to indicate on the agenda that action may be taken following the items discussed in executive session. And this came about because in Mount Pleasant, the council went into executive session and they were in there for a couple hours or whatever. And upon leaving, they voted. And everyone has left. And the person said, well, I just left. I didn't know y'all were going to vote afterwards. So just always put on there that council may vote upon exiting executive session. Just protect yourself.
Can you take personal notes in executive session?
Those personal notes could become records under the freedom of information. And so you can go into you may vote on it coming out of executive session. So I'll give you an example. The town of Toronto, we have our own water system, and we were in the class action lawsuit related to PFAS. And we received legal advice to opt out of that lawsuit. So we received all that legal advice in executive session, but then upon exiting, council voted in public to opt out of the lawsuit. And on your thing about personal notes, I heard a story from one city where they were interviewing for a candidate, and they had the candidate's resumes, and one of the people who didn't get the job requested, she saw taking notes, and she requested them for their notes from that interview. So they had to turn over, and guess what the guy put down? She's wearing my dress. So, not something you want. So again, you have to be aware of this. Everybody doing good?
Don't y'all ever.
So I got one question about the meetings, because I thought we were going to talk about how you make motions. Like, so I was reading Robert's Rules of Order, and saw some things that said that the mayor can make a motion in the meeting, but then it says the chair cannot make a motion in the meeting.
So that's where Robert's rules and state law are not quite in sync with each other.
Yeah.
So again, the mayor is a member of council. By tradition, you see generally mayors don't make motions, but there's one.
Okay. That's what I was trying to do. Because in your notes here, one place you said the chair, and it's the mayor.
State law trumps Robert's rules.
And it's the mayor.
Right. So moving on, a quick rundown of municipal finances. Every city in South Carolina has to adopt a balanced budget by the state constitution. Budgets have to be adopted by ordinance. You have to have a public hearing. In order to have that public hearing, you have to have a newspaper notice at least 15 days in advance of the public hearing. Hopefully you guys have a newspaper where Bruce is a big question whether we don't have a newspaper. You also each year have to complete an annual independent financial audit. The state has really cracked down on this past year, and it used to be, well, during COVID, the penalties were suspended and stopped suspending those penalties. So the state will withhold funds from you if you do not submit that financial audit. And that's been 13 months after the close of the previous year. You also have to submit an annual local government finance report in South Carolina Revenue Fiscal Affairs Office each year. Their penalties for non-compliance. I should have checked. Y'all have local option sales tax?
They do.
So that's been the big one is local option sales tax is a tax that is collected here in the county, but it's remitted to the state, and then the state sends it back to the cities. Cities that are delinquent on their audits are now having their local option sales tax repaid, and that's been presented a lot of difficulty for the
hold on, where's that thing they're trying to figure out? So he says that the local option sales tax, that part of the county's tax is reverted back to the county.
And it goes back to the city, though, right?
If they get a portion of it back, some of it's like 4 versus 6% on your property. Yeah, the homestead exemption all comes back to the city limits.
I'd be lying if I said I understood all the intricacies of how the state calculates the local option sales tax distribution. It's a weird combination of population size and where the sale is made. The point being, you get a check back from, you get 2 checks from the state, you get to keep some, you get to keep all of it. Some of it is taken off property taxes. So, speaking of property taxes, good segue. There are limitations to what you can do with revenues, various revenues. So one of the primary ways you fund your city is through the property tax, and that's called your millage rate. And your millage rate increases are limited to inflation and population growth. So the city of Liberty, your millage rate in 2024 was 0.0993 mils. There are exceptions to increasing the millage rate, like for things like debt service, or if there's an emergency, or if you have a revenue shortfall. You see those from time to time. Just depends on the city. But in general, property tax increases are very, very easy. If you choose to put a new service or a user fee, you have to have fees have to be adopted by a positive majority vote. So that's not just members present and voting. That's a positive majority of all members. So the council, this council, that would be 4. If you have 5 members here, 3 vote yes and 2 vote no, that cannot pass. That's not a positive. And if you raise a revenue with a fee, that revenue is restricted to only pay for the cost of the service or program in which the fee is raised. So for us in Schwal, we contracted out our garbage service, and we had a garbage collection fee. It was $8.16 per household per month, and that revenue could only be used to pay the costs associated with that. There's other various restricted revenues. State accommodations tax. You have statutory restrictions on how it can be used. It must be used on tourism-related expenditures. If you make over $50,000 a year in state accommodations tax, you have to have a committee that makes recommendations on how that money is used. If you have a local accommodations tax, again, it can only be used for tourism-related expenditures. Hospitality tax is a 2% tax on prepared foods. And that also can only go for tourism-related expenditures, and that's defined in your local ordinance, which is highlighted items for state law. And then victims assistance funds, again, there's statutory definitions of what victims assistance funds can be used for. All this to say there's a lot of different sources of revenue that your city receives. Most of it is going to be restricted one way or another to how it is received some. Not everything is just general.
On that account, go towards the general fund. That's separated out.
It's $25,000 can be used. Say you get $30,000 state accommodation tax. The first $25,000 goes directly into your general fund that you can use for anything, and then it's 5% of the remainder can be used for general fund. The rest of the obligations. Also, you'll have funds that are held in trust. So, police fines, you get a $100 ticket, $70 or whatever ends up in the state of South Carolina. You owe that money to the state. Those are funds held in trust by the city of Liberty. Same thing with the fees they have to go for that specific use held in trust. Payroll deductions, insurance premiums, Public funds, this can be a question that we get frequently. Public funds have to be used for a public purpose. And public purpose can be a broad definition, but it's also not a broad definition. There's a 4-part test that goes into deciding if something is a public purpose or not. The first is the goal. What are you trying to achieve? Are the primary beneficiaries the public or private individuals? How speculative is the expenditure? And how probable is the success? So this is set by the South Carolina. This was set in a Supreme Court case. Nichols was the first South Carolina Research Department. And it's just a good kind of guidebook for judging whether or not something is for a public purpose or not. And the example I use is intra-law. We have a local historic preservation plan. We have a lot of crumbling buildings in downtown, and we wanted to encourage people to relive those buildings. So we offered a grant to help rehabilitate the structures. It wasn't much. It was, $15,000. But it wasn't going to rehab the whole building, but it might encourage someone to do so. And sure, we got the pushback. You're just picking, you're helping private individuals. But we looked at it from a different perspective. We had a beautiful historic district that we wanted to preserve. It was a good tourism asset. So we felt that the primary beneficiary of that was going to be the public. We as a city, town control, had a vested interest in preserving our historic resources. Once they're gone forever. So the primary beneficiary in that case may have been an individual business owner, but also there were other benefits for the public at large. We didn't feel that these expenditures were overly speculative, because these were funds that were going to be invested in the structure of the building. So even say the business closed down or something like that, that building was still going to have the work done to it. It was still going to be sitting there ready for its next tenant. It's not overly speculative. We're still going to collect property taxes from that building. And it had a pretty good probability of success. If we were going to help restore these buildings, it was kind of a proven method that other cities have done. Lots of cities offer grant programs, so they have evidence from other places that this is going to be a successful program. And the other thing we would look at is, say we had a building that's going to collapse and we were going to have to tear it down. Well, it might be $80,000 for us to tear it down, and then we have a big vacant spot in our downtown, which is helping anybody. Or we could use this grant program, and we'd encourage someone to purchase this building and rehabilitate it and put a business in there. So we're collecting a business license tax. There's a business attracting people to our community. We're collecting property taxes from the building that would have otherwise been demolished. And this building is now being preserved as part of our historic cabinet. So, again, $15,000 for the grant versus $8,000 to tear it down and make the situation worse. It's really a no-brainer. We felt it passed.
Is there any way you can use the $15,000 as incentives? And have them pay back once they reach a certain amount, pay that incentive back to the city? So it would be kind of like a revolving door?
Yeah.
Can you do that with those funds, is what I'm saying?
Well, that was just a program we came up with. You can come up with a program.
But you can use that $15,000 to do that?
Oh, yeah. Revolving loan funds are fairly common. If downtown revitalization is something you guys are interested in, I would highly encourage you to look at other cities that have made that an initiative and see what they've done to try to contribute. The city of Florence, South Carolina, has a very, very comprehensive incentive program.
So how often can you get that $15,000? You only get it once a year?
For us, we made it use only at one time. We would only, the city council would only fund us, fund it up to be like 1 or 2 a year. And then we would.
But over time,
You can split that up into like 5,000 or whatever and use that.
Yeah. And we put minimum, we put safeguards in place. We put, we didn't just give you $15,000. You had to put a minimum investment in there.
So this is a grant we use about large amount of funds.
In green.
This is the grant.
No, this is
This is just out of here.
general fund is like the equity to pay back to meet this.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be
No, we didn't require it.
Because I could, but what he's getting at is that basically they want to see the work or some kind of list before you get that money. Kind of, you hire a contractor,
So it's
in your
not-
house,
it's-
most of the time you don't want to give them money up front, without doing any work. So you sign a contract, and after that first phase is completed, then you can see. That's kind of what he.
So we did it as a grant program, and like I said, I'm sure we got accused of you just picking your winners or whatever. But again, we felt that was an important tool to help preserve the historic character and encourage downtown revitalization. Again, if that's I can talk about downtown revitalization all day. My background is historic preservation. I'm very much into it, so I'll be more than happy to talk about something. Excuse me. Other things I just like to note, you cannot raise your own salary. Just keep that in mind. You can, but it can't take effect until after the next election. And sorry.
Sorry, y'all. Mayor don't make much either.
You can only be reimbursed for actual expenses incurred. You can't have a per diem, or you can't get allowances up front or anything like that. You need to present receipts and get reimbursed for that amount. And if you don't, it will go to the SC Ethics Commission. They've been on a tear recently, so you don't want to do that. So risk management, real quick. South Carolina Tort Claims Act. This applies to you guys as public officials. As long as you're a public official acting within the course and scope of your official capacity, the Tort Claims Act protects you from personal liability in state court. It does not protect you if you act outside the scope of your duty. So, say you have an investigation and you get some information in executive session about employees, and you go out on Facebook and say, well, that employee, I had an executive session, that employee stole money, and it turned out to not be true, whatever. And you are now personally liable for slandering that employee because you have acted outside the scope of your authority. You're not supposed to take that information outside of the executive session and broadcast it to the world. Now, through SMRF, you have public officials liability insurance with us. It does provide coverage for damages or defense costs for claims against elected officials. Usually, when there's lawsuits in cities, it comes from some type of error in decision making or procedures or something like that. Again, just make sure you're following the steps that you guys have set. Coming down to the end here, getting into the South Carolina Freedom of Information Act. The basics of FOIA are open meetings, open records, and as we were discussing earlier, avoiding those accidental use that can occur, especially in small towns. There's a great guide that was published by the South Carolina Press Association called the Public Officials Guide to Compliance with FOIA. I would highly recommend you download that. If you've got one of the packets, there's a printed copy in there. It covers every section of that law there. Get into the Ethics Act a little bit. South Carolina Ethics Act is Title 8, Chapter 13. It covers public officials and public employees, whether or not you have local ethics rules, which you may or may not, it doesn't matter because they're covered under the South Carolina Ethics Act. So there's no state for this one. One of the big things that you as public officials must be aware of is the Statement of Economic Interest. You have to submit an annual Statement of Economic Interest by noon on March 30th of each year. This is filed online, and you have to do this on your own. You not have the city do it for you. You can't use city resources to do it. You need to do it on your own. And on this report, you're basically putting forth how you're making money, if it's money coming from the government, how much is it, and also by the coverage of the meeting families. South Carolina Ethics Commission, I say they're always here right now. They're actually really, really nice people. They're more concerned about you doing it and doing it correctly, more so than they're trying to play gotcha all the time. That's how I got a lot of time.
And don't forget, it's March 30th, not the 31st, which is very confusing to me.
I've never understood why they did that.
I got your email.
If you don't file this, you will get fined.
This is open now.
Sorry?
This is open to file now.
I think they told me January 1st through the 30th to be here.
Yeah, I think you can go ahead and file now. I still have one to do for my time in Ross. But it needs to be done by March 30th. That's the big thing.
Okay.
They've been in the past.
Sorry?
They do still get notifications on their phone. When you call up there, they'll show you how to set up your phone. So it will send you a notification to remind you to do that. Because if you don't do it, then they fine.
That's nice. I didn't know that.
So I do it.
So,
You have to turn it on and set it.
if you don't file your report, you get an additional fine of $100. After receiving a certified letter, if you don't file it, they're going to send you a certified letter, and after you get that, they're going to charge you $10 per day for 10 days to fine you, I should say. After 10 days, it goes up to $100 per day that you don't file, with a maximum of $5,000. So that's for non-compliance. If you fail to disclose something on your SCI, if it's a genuine accident, you may be given the chance to correct it initially, but if you don't, there's a $2,000 maximum fine for failing to disclose. You can't go wrong with disclosing stuff. Just if you're concerned, just put it on there. Some people are funnier about it than others. It's what the law says. Conflicts of interest. This is covered under two places in state law. So if you hear a conflict of interest, you must refrain from voting and participating on the matter of hand. If you know you have a conflict of interest, and it is your responsibility to note and manage your conflicts of interest, you can actually forfeit your office or position. Conflicts of interest are defined by state law in the Ethics Act, and if you have one, you have to prepare a written statement describing the conflict of interest, and this conflict or this written statement must be filed with the meeting minutes. That's be presented to the chair and filed as part of the official record.
If I had a conflict of interest as the mayor, who's typically hosting the meeting, running the meeting, and I had to refrain from voting, obviously step out of the room for the vote and all that stuff, would my pro temp then take over?
If you need to remove it,
Okay.
that's what I would do.
Okay.
If you don't have a recusal statement, we have a model on the website, and we're more than happy to copy it. I think just about every city in South Carolina. So going into that a little bit further, what is a conflict of interest? You cannot use your official office to gain an economic interest for yourself, a family member, an individual you're associated with, or a business you're associated with. And you cannot use your office to influence a governmental decision in which you have an economic interest. So, what is an economic interest? It's an interest that is distinct from that of the general public in a purchase, sale, lease, contract, option, or other transaction or arrangement involving property or services in which a public official or public employee or whoever may gain an economic benefit of $50. There is an exemption for large class benefits. So, just to use a very basic example, say you guys have not downtown master plan, if it gets fully implemented, everyone's property values will go up 500%. Well, you're clearly going to benefit from that plan being adopted. But you're not the only ones. Everyone in the city is going to benefit from that. You're part of a large class. That's not a distinct economic interest. On a more specific level, I think there was a case in Georgetown where they were redoing the waterfront, and they were going to redo the boardwalk along the waterfront or something like that, and the council member owned the property along that waterfront. And they asked the question of the Ethics Commission if they needed to recuse themselves, and the Ethics Commission said no, because your interest in that project is the same as everyone else's. Same thing like, you know, trail over by your house. So there's another section of this law. I'll sum these up in very simple. Don't solicit bribes and don't take bribes. Just don't do it. If you call me and say, oh gosh, I accepted a bribe, just not. I can't. I'm not here to work with you guys. Just don't take bribes. It's illegal to offer bribes. It's illegal to take them. Let's just keep it that way. So, conflicts of interest, just in summary, recuse yourself if you have to, disclose in writing at a meeting, and avoid participation. When we say avoid participation, we actually encourage members, and I believe the Ethics Commission does as well, to leave the room. You don't want to give the impression of influencing a decision by nodding your head, looking at somebody, or shaking your head, anything like that. Now, if you have a situation arise where say if you left the room and use the quorum, in that case you can stay in the room and keep the quorum, but at that point you should not do anything. Keep your body language in check and don't participate in anything. If you're unsure about a conflict of interest, you can ask the Ethics Commission. They'll issue you an informal opinion. It's a non-binding opinion, and you can give them a set of real or hypothetical facts if you don't want to tell them yourself. They sometimes will issue what's called advisory opinions, which are official published opinions, and that's if it's going to apply to multiple people. The large class benefits and advisory opinions. If you're still unsure at the end of the day, you can still recuse yourself. Just follow steps, disclose it, and write down and avoid participation. And then going into that last part, like I said, as council members, if you're traveling, which for instance, if you're traveling to Columbia next week, you can't take it per diem. You can only get paid for actual expenses incurred. So if you have mileage set by policy, you have to take the mileage. There's no provision to allow members to have expense allowances to cover future unknown expenses. Per diems are not allowed. And the reason for this is because, say you took a per diem and you didn't spend it all, you have just given yourself a raise, which is illegal. Just keep those receipts and just get reimbursed. Pick up the credit card.
So when you do your financial report or whatever, you show the mileage on that as well?
No, because that's reimbursement for actual expenses incurred.
Okay, so you don't have to show it.
And that's basically it, yeah. I'm open to any other questions if you have them, but that's about all I have for now. There's a lot more to the other questions.
I've been asking them as we've been going.
So what can you give us? Nighttime hangout?
Little easy. I mean, I'm impressed. There's a lot of
Do you know what senators are going to be speaking in Columbia?
I'll be honest, it's so busy I'm not looking at the all. I have my assigned duties that day, that's what I'm
Usually they're pretty good topics.
I'd love to hear more from Rex Rice on the whole annexation piece, why he thinks it's a good idea about the counties kind of holding municipalities from annexing if they want to. I'd like to just hear the
Yeah.
I want to speak from the county standpoint. I think some of the problem I saw from the county standpoint was, and I'm going to use the Rice Street Road annexation to River Creek, next property on Rice Street Road. And the project anyways, the county owned the roadway, the city annexed, and the roadway was not suitable for development. The taxpayers haven't paid up the road. Basically, it's communication is what it comes down to. I think annexation is good for the city, but it needs to be a communication collaborative effort where everybody knows what's going on before it happens. You can consult the school district, make sure there's capacities, consult the county on the roads, the infrastructure, the city. And that's what I think. That was the biggest thing that I heard through the years from the county standpoint.
And I think that's the most compelling argument. Now, again, the association is going to protect the city's right to evidence. But the most compelling argument I've heard is that it just needs to be a little more collaborative. And ideally, it should be collaborative. It should be.
I'm going to take the opposite. I don't like you as the elected officials for your town. You're in charge of what happens. And if you're trying to say yay or nay on it, it takes away your authority. That's what I like to do. If the county can avoid, and it also takes away the petitioner's right to petition, because only the people that are already contiguous can petition for annexation, unless they are, a group of people that are going to do a chain. It's not like the whole world is going to be trying to develop to avoid. The argument I hear is that developers petitioned to annex because they didn't like the standards that were being applied by the county.
Right.
I heard that.
And that the city was willing to give to a PD when it had, different regulations or whatever. But it's really a fairly small, particularly for smaller municipalities, it's a fairly small group of people that are even going to be able to petition for annexation, but they have to be contiguous.
For me, this is more about the developer being responsible for all the costs associated with the annexation. I'm all for the city being annexed. However, the developer, it's going to cost, because we as city residents and city taxpayers, we pay the same amount of taxes as the county residents do. So, if we annex in and we use Rice Street Road, it's going to cost $2 million to upgrade Rice Street Road. We not only are we going to do it for some of the cost of the annexation, we're also going to do it for some of the cost of the upgrade to the road. I think the developers should be responsible for all costs.
And new pays for infrastructure can be part of your analysis when you're looking at it.
That's what we need to be doing when we annex, in my opinion. From an annexation standpoint, we do all these quick annexations, and I was thinking about the road trip while I go there. The way that agreement is set up and the county position is anything within our incorporated boundaries belongs to us. So if we annex, we go a quarter of a mile down the road, annex Mr. Wolf's property, we just took in a quarter mile roadway. We can't afford to maintain.
That's
through annexation based on their interpretation. That's why we get some of these things fixed.
And that's what, in our annexation handbook, we encourage cities to really think about the financial costs associated with annexation, because in some cases it can be a losing proposition.
And that's what if it makes sense, we need to do it. If it don't, right? Why do we do it? And I think
that's all
we have to do it.
But that's the city's right.
Yes, I agree with that. I do agree with that, right? I just think we have to communicate better, because we're actually the city residents. I don't use the word shaft. I'll use the word shaft. We get shafted a lot, and we talk in Mary talk about this. We pay out the same amount of taxes as the county residents. And our ad taxes cover the basic services. And I told Mary Walker, those are basic services. Anybody in the county will utilize the city road. We're paying twice for roads. When the city has roads we maintain, we also pay the county.
Try getting West Front Street fixed. I try to get an acre at my house. And the county, the state, or the city won't do that. So I pay for it. Yeah. They kept swapping it off on the other one, so I just never did it.
The least compelling argument I've heard is, I don't think it was in South Carolina, but it was an anti-annexation person in the county, and I believe the quote was, what's the point of being king if you don't have a kingdom? That's my least compelling argument I've heard.
Well, for me, one other compelling argument is that if you don't grow, the cost of goods and services always goes up. And so you have to raise taxes on your existing residents if you don't add more water customers, if you don't add more sewer customers, if you don't add to your gross property value for the city. Those reasons are important. But I think one thing, when I was at City Council, we did a checklist of all the things that had to be looked at: cost of roads, cost of are we going to sell them water, or are we going to sell them sewer, do we have to run lines out, and look at all those things. How much are we going to require more police to cover that area?
But long term, as we do with annexation, I'd like to talk to Mayor Western that before she became mayor, I think we need to know the totalized cost associated with annexation before we ever start talking about votes. So this is what's going to cost us, this is what additional services it's going to need. Because sometimes we annex bigger properties and Cornell's expanding that area. So we do want to bring in a lot of jobs and it's going to require him to probably be on site a little bit.
We had an annexation request, so we were in numbers of the value of the property versus the services we would have to provide, especially if it's kind of a higher crime area.
We even do a lot of during the planning commission, we done our public council work with Chip. He said, hey, kind of, additionally, residential transaction does not pay the cost of service they're going to provide. So that makes you think, why are we going after residential annexation? Only 1 and 2 here and there. Why don't we look at our out-of-city rates and maybe adjust those where we recoup more off out-of-city water rates? I'm sorry, I got tracked up.
There are some reasons to do individual parcels if you're trying to get to a larger town. Get to a
Kind of, we talk about the Boyville Strip, 1.3. And there's reasons to do it, but we don't know the number before we do the reasons.
I agree.
Any other questions for me? If not, I'll plan to see you